For those who don't know, I'm currently enrolled in a class at Amherst College called Molecular Gastronomy. It's been a great class and we've learned all sorts of different techniques. And as a final culmination of all the things we've learned, we are tasked to prepare a small dish that could be handed out at a little food festival, Chem-Coachella. The food festival will be for students, staff, and faculty at Amherst College to try out a variety of different dishes created by students in this class. So, the plan? Simple. Work with Ashley and Sean to prepare a dish that not only tastes good, looks good, but also showcases our knowledge and expertise in the various aspects of this course, all while building the better community and sharing cultural stories. So, together we worked and planned to give you jaja-n onigiri, a salmon onigiri with a surprise filling of spherified kimchi jjigae. Onigiri, also known as rice ball, is a Japanese dish that typically contains fillings such as fish, pickled plum, or cod roe. It has historically been known as a quick on-the-go meal, which fits the sample theme of this project. We will fill our onigiri with salted salmon cooked via sous vide and spherified kimchi jjigae. The onigiri will be topped with furikake to allow for tender meat, crispy rice, and soft spheres of the kimchi jjigae, combining the saltiness from our kimchi jjigae, the crunchiness from our furikake seasoning, and the sweetness from our sushi rice into a cohesive, small bite. Now, why do we choose onigiri, and specifically the kimchi jjigae spheres? Well, while coming up with our idea, both Ashley, Sean, and I emphasized that we wanted an Asian-style dish, as these sort of on-the-go meals or street-style foods were incredibly popular in Asian countries. I remember going to Korea and eating fish cakes on skewers, or tteokbokki or sundae late at night, and we figured a savory Asian-style dish would be perfect. While none of us are Japanese, onigiri was brought up due to its small size and easiness to eat. It focuses on rice, which is predominant in many Asian cultures, and also allows for creativity with the inside filling. Other forms of onigiri are also quite popular in Korea in many of their convenience stores, known as samgakkimbap. Now with that in mind, we thought about what we wanted to fill the onigiri with. After thinking about savory flavors, we thought of the most popular Korean dish, kimchi. Loved by people all across the world, kimchi has been incorporated in dishes not only just by itself, but also kimchi combined with other foods like pancakes or soups. Feeling confident with our recent win in the spherification lab, we thought making the soup into spheres would be a unique way to add flavor to the onigiri and give an extra kick to the tasters. And so, it was time to make our plan. Now before I start, it is important to quickly run through the different techniques we use. Sous vide is a French technique that translates to under vacuum that produces very tender and juicy meats. The meat is sealed in a plastic bag from which the air is removed, which prevents the meat from becoming oxidized, before it is submerged in a water bath and cooked at a precise temperature. Now while it's being cooked, the proteins in the meat, like collagen, is broken down, resulting in a very tender meat. Spherification involves adding sodium alginate, xanthan gum, and sodium citrate into a liquid, blending the mixture with an immersion blender and passing it through a fine sieve to give us a solution that could be placed in a syringe to produce little spheres of the solution once dropped into a bath of water and calcium chloride, allowing for a little popping boba sensation when you bite into the sphere, allowing for an explosion of flavor once you take the bite. With these methods in our back pocket, it was time to plan and prepare exactly what we were going to do. We had to make roughly 100 samples of our dish, and it was due by Tuesday, May 2nd. And because making 100 individual onigiri pieces seems rather time-consuming, we wanted to maximize the time we had to mold our rice into the onigiri shape. So, our plan was to come in on May 1st, make the kimchi jjigae and spherify them, and store the spheres for use on Tuesday. Then on Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. we will come in, prepare the rice that we need, season to make the sushi rice, and then saran wrap the bowl to ensure no moisture or heat is lost while the rest of the rice is being made. Then at 10:30, we'll start the sous vide process of our salmon fillets, cook until 11:30, and then once all the fillet has finished cooking, we will mash it up for our salmon filling, and then gather the kimchi jjigae spheres, our rice, nori, and furikake, and begin assembling 100 plus onigiri pieces. Once finished, which will hopefully be by 1:30, we can all clean up our space. Now, with the plan in store, it was now time to put this into action. Let's go! So the ingredients that we use for the kimchi jjigae is shown here. And now let's walk through how we made the kimchi jjigae. So that Monday we came in, set up our induction stove, and got everything ready to make the kimchi jjigae. We first added our water and dried anchovies to a pot and waited for it to boil. While it was boiling, we obtained half our kimchi and placed it in the boiling water, while the other half was placed in a pan and fried in olive oil, the best kind of oil. And we covered this pot with an appropriately sized lid. For a while. Then, while everything's been boiling, you want to make your actual sauce for the kimchi jjigae, which is done using gochugaru, soy sauce, gochujang, and of course, garlic granules and a little additional pepper to taste. So once that has all been added, you want to just mix it gently, and then you should get a nice pasty mixture that looks like this. After the water starts boiling, add in the sauce and make sure to stir well so that the sauce is dissolved in the soup, as well as add in the rest of the cooked kimchi. Once everything is fully dissolved and mixed, let it simmer for about 5 minutes. While waiting for the soup to cool, prepare the ingredients needed for spherification, including the calcium chloride bath, as well as the sodium alginate, xanthan gum, and sodium citrate powders. Once the soup has cooled, filter out the kimchi jjigae so you are just left with the broth. Pour out some of the broth to be used later to store all the kimchi spheres. Then obtain an immersion blender and add in the powder mixture you prepared earlier of sodium alginate, xanthan gum, and sodium citrate, and sprinkle it over the broth. Let that sit for 5 minutes, and once the 5 minutes is up, mix it on low speed with an immersion blender and make sure not to splatter your group mates. Pass this mixture through a fine sieve, and now we are ready to make the spheres. Set up your spherification station by pouring out some distilled water to wash the spheres in, grabbing your syringe dropper and your spheres broth. Then take up some of the broth and drop in spheres into the calcium chloride bath. Now we added in spheres for 1 minute and then waited for 2 minutes for the broth to actually spherify the kimchi jjigae. You can also use smaller spoons to yield larger sized spheres, which will add much more flavor when biting into the sphere. So we did this with all the broth that we made, and we ended up getting quite a lot of spheres, as you can see here.
Bam!
And of course, after everything's been done, make sure to clean up your station for the next day. And again, the ingredients for the sushi rice as well as making the onigiri and the salmon is shown here. Then the following day, we came in and started immediately, but of course, not before we've washed our hands. And make sure we wash our hands thoroughly to avoid any germs or any contamination. Then we started the process of making our rice by weighing out the rice we needed into the rice bowl, and then cleaning at least 3 or 4 times with water, rinsing the rice to make sure all the starch or most of the starch is gone. With our clean rice, we added in the proper amount of water and placed the rice into the rice cooker and let it cook. While waiting for the rice to cook, Ashley prepared the sushi rice seasoning. And to a separate pot, she added salt, sugar, and rice wine vinegar and brought that to a boil to help dissolve everything. We added the rice wine vinegar seasoning into the rice and mixed well with the spatula to make sure that all the rice got an equal amount of the flavors. Then we covered the rice in saran wrap to avoid any water loss while we prepared more rice and prepared the rest of our ingredients. Next, we obtained our salmon fillet and cut it down into smaller pieces that would fit a sous vide bag. While doing this, we also set up the water bath and heated up the water to the desired temperature. After cutting the fish, we seasoned it with salt on both sides and cut out an appropriately sized sous vide bag, sealed one side, and placed our salmon pieces into the bag. Now, after taking out as much air out of the bag as possible, we sealed the other side. Once we had all our salmon pieces in the sous vide bags, we placed them into the sous vide bath and let them cook for an hour. Then we gathered our rice, salmon paste, and kimchi jjigae spheres. And with an excited, positive look, it was time to form 100 onigiri pieces. Now to do this, we had the help of an onigiri mold. No, not that type of mold. This type of mold. We first wet our hands to ensure none of the rice would stick to our hands, and we placed a layer of rice into the mold and made a small divot in the center, allowing us to place around 3 to 4 kimchi jjigae spheres, which helped the spheres to be protected and not pop. Then we placed a couple pieces of salmon on top of the spheres and placed rice on top, making sure to surround the fillings and the side of the onigiri with rice to ensure a tight seal of rice. Then we placed a piece of cut nori on the bottom of the onigiri and dipped the sides in furikake. Each onigiri was placed in a small plastic bowl and collected on large dishes and covered in saran wrap until it was time to serve. Okay, time to go. Cue the intense music. It's onigiri time.
Final product.
And we finally finished. But now, it was time for the hungry Chem-Coachella fans to come in and feast. We waited anxiously to see how our dish was accepted by our community.
Coming in?
They're coming in.
Ooh. Welcome. Look at that stacked line. Hey. Hello. Hello, hello.
And our dish was a hit. Take it from our non-biased, definitely not paid off food critics.
But, oh, thank you. Out of 10.
15 out of 10.
Let's go.
The rest of the Chem-Coachella attendees commented on the shape and presentation of our dish. They thoroughly enjoyed the triangle shape and thought it was very unique, even though some were falling apart. They enjoyed the tenderness of the salmon and the crunchiness the furikake added to the onigiri. However, others commented on the lack of kimchi taste. Now, this was due to the fact that by leaving our spheres out to rest overnight, they became very gel-like the next morning and lost the flavor popping sensation that the original spheres had. So we had to remake the spheres that day, the day of the food festival, and our soup was not as concentrated due to the lack of time. Others noticed the presence of too much rice, which was due to the fact that it was the first time myself, Ashley, and Sean had ever made onigiri, and finding the right ratio of ingredients when making the actual onigiri was a learning process. Now, as tiring and back aching making the onigiris were, we all had fun making them, laughing and praying hard that the onigiri wouldn't crumble or fall apart. It was amazing to see all the smiles at the festival and people share that it was their first time trying onigiri and being impressed at the taste and shape of our dish. We were all tired from working, but seeing the smiles on the faces of our tasters and seeing how this Asian-inspired dish brought the Amherst community together made it all the more worthwhile.